Hi everyone, it's Trev from Coiltek here, and today we're going to do a tech talk on our new 18-inch MYTHTEK coil. This is the big beast here. It suits the manticore detector. We're very proud to release this coil. We've had it out in testing for several months, so we can get some really good feedback on how it performs on the ground. So you can hit us up through our socials, on Coiltek on Facebook and through Instagram. We also now have a Tek Talk account as well with some reels going up on there. And also you can hit us up through our website anytime to ask any questions. So this new 18-inch MYTHTEK coil suits a manticore detector. I've got two fantastic gentlemen that are going to join me tonight. They've been part of our testing crew that has tested this coil out in the field before its release, and they've definitely helped us get some really good feedback on the performance, how the coil's going, making sure that we've got everything right for release. So let me get both of these gentlemen in. The first gentleman is Paul Cointector and Guy the Gold Rush guy. They're both from Victoria in Australia. There they are. There's Paul. How are you going, Paul?
G'day, Trev. How are you, mate?
Very good. Thanks for joining me tonight. And Guy's just popped in there. There he is. How you going, Guy?
Yes, I'm here. G'day, fellas.
G'day, Guy.
So for the viewers out there, I've done a couple of sessions with Guy, and you would have seen our talks before on the Knox coil and also the Gold Hawk. And Paul has been running and has been putting videos out already on the 18-inch MYTHTEK, but has used our coils extensively and quite a lot on the Equinox detectors that he runs as well, and also doing some more GPX stuff, I believe, as well, Paul.
Yeah, correct.
Gold
Yes.
Hawks.
Yeah, got the little 9-inch, so I'm keen to take that out with the 6,000. So
yeah, the 9-inch has been great, but we'll do a Gold Hawk talk another time. But for today, we're definitely going to talk about this 18-inch. And probably the first thing that I wanted to ask both of you, and we really appreciate all your feedback and information that you're getting out there. But one of the first things is your first impression, Paul. What was your first impression of the 18-inch coil when that first rocked up to use that?
yeah, right. Well, I'm always impressed with the quality of the Coiltek coils. Now I'll just see if I can. I just want to. I've got the actual coil here with me, so I'm just going to pull it up here. One of the things I was really impressed with is you've reinforced the ears.
Yes, yeah, the tombstone mount. Yeah, that's right. Yep.
I like it because quite often they had problems, with these sort of being a bit, I guess,
Flimsy
fragile
or fragile. Yeah.
and breaking. And so that's as solid as. And when you pick the coil up, you just know that it's, to break something like that, you're going to have to give it a decent old belt. So that was one of the things, and just the overall build quality. It's fantastic. I've used a lot of Coiltek coils, and I've actually never even broke one. So I've broke shafts and things like that before on my machine, but not a coil. So well done,
that's good. Yeah, we certainly put a little bit of extra into making sure that the coils are very robust and can take a lot of work out there because they do cop a bit of a brunt. How about you, Guy? When you first received the coil, and obviously it's also in the similar housings to the Knox coil that we've got, but with that new tombstone design and how it felt for you, the aesthetics, the weight. What do you think of all of that?
Yeah, I suppose one of my key things that I do is I like to go out to, if you like, pasture or old gold rush towns that are typically in paddocks and so forth. So one of the big things I look for is the ability to actually move through, grass, even thicker grass, and it just bulldozes through that. It's really, really good at doing that. And also the flip side of that is some of the larger coils previously, if you go back to some of the CTXs and some of the earlier models, they'll tend the bigger ones will tend to false on when you go through grass and that. But this is just a beast. It really, really is quite stable and it works excellent. Massive depth and the the big thing is, right, we've got this big coil, and we've got this such a powerful machine like the Manticore that
Mm.
puts out this power, and it's fully utilized with this coil.
Yeah, definitely that was one thing that we knew that the Manticore had was that extra power and coupled with the big coil. Yeah, like you're saying, that depth becomes crazy. But also, on those smaller targets too, that means that you're not missing a lot of those smaller ones at better depths as well. So, um,
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. And you've probably seen with one of the videos that I've uh, put out. So finding some of the smallest silver coins, little threepences and so forth. So with a lot of people, especially with a powerful coil like a machine like the Manticore, when you're looking for that separation, a lot of people think, well, you've got to have the smaller coils to get that separation. But even with a big 18-inch MYTHTEK, the separation is still fantastic and able to pick out those small targets
mm,
in relatively trashy ground. So these are in some of these were in parks where there's significant EMI and other sources really trying to impact on the capabilities of the machine, but it just went right through that. So I was very, very impressed with that.
and when you first, it's a bigger coil, so naturally you have more mass and everything with a bigger coil. Obviously, weight is a big concern for a lot of people swinging detectors out there, which we completely understand. But how did you feel the coil, Paul, on the shaft when you started to use it there, and the weight side of things? How did it go for you?
Yeah, well, you definitely notice the bigger coil, and that's just the nature of a big coil, I suppose. It's going to
Mm,
actually be heavier, but I've been using the 15 a lot, so I'm sort of used to the bigger coils. After a while, it does, maybe 2 or 3 hours, you can feel like you need a break, and even some people perhaps might want to run
yep.
a bungee cord just to relieve the. But what I would say was just go slow and take a few more breaks and just sort of manage the extra. It's nothing too out of control. I find it fine, but other
Mm.
people, like I say, might want to use a bungee or bungee cord or some sort of harness just to take that pressure off their arm or shoulder a little bit. But
There's
yeah,
plenty of bungee cords out on the market for
there
people to
is.
try.
There is, yeah, that's correct. But in going back to what Guy says too, a lot of the paddocks and fields that we detect in the northeast Victoria here, we might have a paddock that's 40 or 50 acres, and you want to sort of try and go
Mm.
through the paddock and find some noisy areas. So, as Guy said, that thing you can really sort of work through the little bit longer grass, and you're still getting that depth,
Mm.
but you're covering a lot more ground quicker. So.
And
It's
that's a
fantastic.
big thing for, a lot of those open fields, where to use that coil, where's it best suited. And
Yeah,
you're
that's
saying,
right.
the parks, the fields, is there any other areas that you guys think would be very well suited to this coil?
Well, I actually did take it to the beach. I was on holidays. I
Yeah,
got washed.
nice.
I got washed out a little bit, so the weather turned really bad actually. But I did get a chance to run the Manticore on the beach. And that thing, I was really surprised. It ran super smooth. I had hardly any EMI or any sort of other noises coming through with the hot ground and the sand. So it was really, really stable. And deep. I was digging deep holes that day, so I didn't do a
Hopefully
lot of
they weren't all
filming.
ring pulls.
Well, I did find my fair share of them,
Yes. Good.
and so but it definitely does run really smooth on the beach. That's one thing I found. So I enjoyed using it on the beach too. That was great.
What about you guys? What about parks? We all make sure that we refill our holes and look after our parks, don't leave them messier than what we found them. But, how would you find this on a park or that sort of field or anything like that?
Yeah, so one of the videos that's out, so you can have a look at that on the Gold Rush guide. So there's one on the MYTHTEK hitting some of the parks. So one of those parks is to give people an idea, probably within 100 meters of where I was detecting, there was major tram routes, major train routes, and there's also they've done a significant amount of putting underground power there. So in terms of EMI, it's a bit of a hotbed that area, and I could still easily run it up to 28 without it sort of just chattering away in the background, which it can do um, in some circumstances. So that to me was really really good, and still got all the great depth and the other
Mm.
performance that sort of comes with that.
And talking about, those areas that you go to, Guy, one of the things with these coils for the Manticore, the MYTHTEK and Knox and Gold Hawk is we have them MindLab approved. So that means that they actually run through their engineers. MindLab don't just approve a coil that we make just for the sake of it. It definitely goes through their engineering and testing. And Guy, you were involved with that as well, talking to the MindLab engineers about how you found the coil out in the fields. So,
So I think what a lot of people think, oh, that mine they've just put a sticker on it and Bob's your uncle sort of thing. So it's just not that way. There's a lot of toing and frying. So I'm talking with the senior engineers there because they do all of their tests. So they give this as good a workout as we do.
mm,
And they've got test grounds and do other sort of tests on the coil, especially around how it performs, using some of the different multi frequencies and all that kind of stuff. So there's not only our QA, and we've obviously got an accredited ISO certification at Coiltek, but the fact that MindLab go through all of that, and
mm.
we, as I said, we have a very open dialogue. So they'll say, "Can you test this on it?" And we're sharing videos of how we're testing this and what and how it actually reacted in different circumstances. So it's really about sort of sharing our experience with the MindLab engineers to ensure that the product is the best that we can put out on the market.
Yeah, I remember having a text message communication with you about, a noise concern with wet grass. And next minute, I get a video back from Guy at night time running through wet grass at full flat out, going, "Look, it's not doing anything." So, it just means that, people can trust the fact that this coil is a plug and play. There's no other things you need to do. You don't need to reset your detector. You can just unplug a coil and plug a new one in. There's been many talks over many years about resetting your detector if I plug a new coil in. You shouldn't have to. I don't believe you guys have ever done that or do that regularly, because your settings are in there. You don't want to reset those. So, super important in that regards for people's, that can trust the brand Coiltek, and also with MindLab as well, that are putting their name on it. We do go through all of that knock testing, fatigue testing, sensitivity, depth, noise levels, wet grass, salty water. So everything's got to be checked to make sure that it gets that approval. So when it gets in Paul Cointector's hands, he knows he's got a product that he can rely on out there. That's for sure.
Yeah, correct. That's right. And in going what Guy was sort of touching on a little bit there, we've got a lot of electric fences in our region where, farmers and the fields we get permissions on.
Yeah.
And I ran the 18 right up close to an electric fence thinking I was going to get a lot of noise. I think I've done a little video of it too. And it was as quiet as a mouse. You could hear the tick of the fence every now and then, but it was super smooth, and I was really impressed thinking it's going to really chatter. And I was running a high sensitivity around about 28, even to 30, and it still didn't affect it. So super impressed with that too.
So going on with that, like, what can people expect going from a standard size coil to an 18-inch pool? Like, you've used multiple different sizes of coils and multiple different machines. And when you go from a smaller coil to a larger coil, there's got to be some expectations around noise levels and that. What would you expect, and give any advice around that?
Yeah, sure. I guess you're always going to get a little bit more interference because just the nature of having a big coil on your machine. But yeah, it's a little bit like R2D2. You've got all these little noises in your head.
Yeah.
But when you go over a target, you're not going to miss it. And Guy will probably agree, especially if you go over a nice silver or you've hit on an old English penny. Especially with the Manticore too, because it's such a powerful machine. It just leaps out at you. You can tell the difference between a bit of ground noise and interference and a good target. So we just listen in for the decent repeatable ones, even the lower lower tones, and that's what we do. We dig everything where we are because you never know, it's going to be a gold sovereign one day. The lower conductors or lower
numbers.
Yeah, exactly. So, but no, impressed, really impressed. It's been great. So.
And Guy, in relation to the target IDs and things like that, how have you found that the coils responded compared to standard coil, with the target IDs and discrimination?
Yeah, it's spot on, Trevor. It's actually it's probably of the larger coils that I've tested over the years. I was very very impressed. So one of the tests that I'll do is I'll run it on the whole suite of different coils for the Manticore and test that because there's nothing it's frustrating for a new user to put another coil on and go, well, especially people that like for in Australia where you might have patterns, you're only looking for $1 and $2 coins,
Yeah,
and that changes. So and then you have
correct.
to go in and change settings on the Manticore. So yeah, it's one of the tests that we do, and yeah, it really, as I said, it's spot on. Like you could run a side by side test with like the new 9 inch that's come out from MindLab,
Yep.
and it will give you this exact same number.
Yeah, that's great. And that's part of the programming calibration that we do in-house here on the technical side when we're building all the coils. They run through a MindLab program. So it gets preloaded with a bunch of information, but also we need to make sure that the specs are right within the coil windings as well, which helps identification and run the frequencies that these coils, these detectors are now running. So the pulse rates and the power that this thing has, it's definitely part of the equation is the coil, and we have to get the windings right for that to work properly. So super important for, like you're saying, Guy, and Paul would know, you plug a new coil in, you want it to respond very similarly. And, I have heard both of you and watched both of your videos, and you can hear that the coil does chatter a little bit. And when you're running around, and swinging along, you do get a bit of noise. But with training, I guess people can sort of decipher those solid targets better. How long does it sort of take to sort of get used to a new coil, like a large coil like this?
Oh yeah, exactly. I'll jump in. I think with detecting, it's just time with your machine, getting to know your machine inside out, and the more time and hours you can put onto it, obviously, the better you get. Quite often, when we're in those big paddocks and we're getting a lot of noises, you can basically, not always, but pretty much, null out those ground noises before you might hit on a good target. So yeah, so basically. You sort of get used to it. And I would highly suggest that people just spend time with their machine,
Mm.
get as much time on the ground with it, and that's where you really learn. The coil, you can swap out any coil, but once you know your machine, then everything else falls into place, I feel.
Yeah,
So
that's a good point. What about
yeah.
you, Guy? Do you do same sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's interesting. While the one of the strengths of the Manticore is to have a look at the two-dimensional screen that gives you a lot of information about the target, whether it's sort of the beautiful little circles that we're looking for right on the middle line, or the ones that are a little bit iffy, where they might be on their side, or there may be some sort of other interference with other targets. But yeah, I think it's all about the setup too. I think that's one of the things that I'm quite strong on is the default settings are there for a reason because all of the MindLab engineers and all of the pre-testers before this has been released, they feed into those. So if you're going, and I know MindLab have just put out a few other videos on the Manticore as well, and it's you don't want to go too far away from it. So what you want to do is try to set it up because there's one thing that we all have that's different, and it's our hearing. So, and
Mm.
it's how we want to respond. So, as Paul and can will tell you that it's you're listening to that tone, and then the second thing you do is then look at the screen and go, yes, this is a good target.
Yeah,
Yeah,
correct.
very good. Well, a couple of takeaways. It's great little chat session there. We'll we'll finish up at part one. Stay tuned for part two. A couple of takeaways is a bigger coil will have a little bit more weight to it and a little bit more inherent noise. So just make sure you're playing around with those gain settings and adjusting the sensitivity of the thing to suit your environment. It's going to have great depth on the machine, and just take your time to learn the new coil and learn your machine, which will really give you the most out of it. Don't automatically think it's not working for you. You do need to put some hours behind it, like anything, to really get used to it. So thanks, gentlemen. We'll leave it here for part one. Stay tuned, people. Part two's coming soon. And if you're watching one after the other, part two's about to start. Hey everyone, back for part two, talking about the 18-inch MYTHTEK. We've got Paul Cointector and Guy, the Gold Rush guy, joining us for a chat around the 18-inch MYTHTEK coil for the Manticore. They've been running this coil, as you can see. Yeah, it's behind both of them there, and I've got one here as well. So at least we've got some things, some coils here that we can show off.
The beast.
It is a bit of a beast. You sort of, I think you referred to it as the mothership on one of your videos as well, or the big girl or something like that, Paul. So
yeah, that's right.
Getting a few nicknames out there.
Yeah, that's
right. So basically we chatted a little bit about the coil in part one. I wanted to just ask about your swing technique with these larger coils, because obviously you do have to handle it a little bit different. It's a bit more of a beast of a coil to run. So Guy, for yourself, when you're using a larger coil compared to a smaller one, how do you change your swing when you're running these coils, and as far as speed and direction and upper body and everything like that? Is there any tips that you can give viewers about using larger coils?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. So the first thing is it's obviously heavier. So the first thing is that you'll naturally slow down, and that's I think if there's one, I suppose one tip I can give any person with any detector, they work better the more you slow down. I know, the Manticore is, you can swing it as fast as you want, and it will still pick up targets and all that kind of stuff. But I can assure you some of the best finds are found when you've just slowed down and taken your time in an area. And Paul will attain that, is even taken the MYTHTEK over some places that they've been to multiple times, and you just see some of the targets that are coming out of the ground with the bigger coil, because you naturally slow down.
Yeah, correct.
What about you, Paul? Was there any other techniques that you employ when you use a larger coil like this?
Yeah, like I said, just slow down a little bit more. Like my swing speed tends to slow down when you've got the stock 11-inch coil or something. You can blast through, but with the bigger coil, I just slow the swing speed down. And also the way you set up your actual detector, you don't want the shaft too small, so you're hunched over. You sort of want all those ergonomics correct with your machine, and get that set up with your shaft length and everything. And just slow down and take your time. And if you need a break, have a break. If you want to look at some sort of bungee or a harness just to take that extra little weight off, you can do that. But I think the number one thing is just slow down and take your time with it, and you get less fatigue that way in the long run, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
I mean, it's really important to try and reduce that fatigue. What were you going to say, guys? Sorry.
Yeah. And I was just saying to Paul makes a really good point, is that you tend to have the shaft a little bit further extended, just by an inch or so. It just gives you that extra, I suppose, length between you and the coil as well. So, and it just allows for a better swing pattern as well. So you don't want it to be too close to you, because you'll start almost falling over yourself a little bit. So that's probably a really good point also with the actual setup of the coil and the shaft.
Well, we have on the coil is designed to go with the Coiltek label up the front, And so when you're detecting, you'll find that the mount point is about an inch behind center. So we've done that purposefully just to get the nose out a little bit further away as well from your feet, and that so it's a little bit further out. It does sort of put the little bit of center of balance a little bit forwards a little bit more. So just taking your time, exactly like what the gentleman is saying, having a rest. The thing to avoid is if it starts to get too thick with the undergrowth, you can tend to put a fair bit of pressure on that bottom yoke that's on top of that tombstone mounting. So you don't want to put too much pressure on that to, risk any breakage or anything around there. So if it does get a bit too thick, you'd sort of, maybe avoid that area with grass. Paul, what would you say if the grass starts getting a bit too thick?
Yeah, I would sort of probably tend to dance around it. And I've actually found targets where the grass was a little bit too thick, and I've sort of gone around, the little tussocks of grass. But I've actually found targets by lifting it up and going actually over the
Over it,
grass.
yeah.
And even though, you're getting a little bit of extra depth anyway because you've got the big coil. I've had it a couple of inches off the ground and still picked up targets. So you can dance around a little bit, when you're out in the field. But we're pretty lucky where we are because we've sort of normally this time of year got beautiful, short grass. All the cattle's eating the grass down, and it's lovely swinging. So it just depends, I guess, a lot where you are too. So
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we are exporting this coil globally, so people through Europe and the US and the UK and pretty much anywhere that wants to buy the coil, may have different environments, whether they're rocky terrain or
yes.
low shrubs, grasses, beaches. So just be really mindful of where you're at, making sure that you're, protecting your investment. That's one of the things, it is there to help you find great targets and things that can slowly pay you back if you're going to cash them in, because metal detecting is one of the only hobbies out there that will make you money the more you swing it. But just making sure that you're, adapting to the environment and the situation. And, I guess these coils are not for every situation. I mean, you gentlemen would choose a different coil to suit different scenarios and different detecting types. We talked a little bit before about where this coil's suited, but, why would you change to a different coil at any time? Guy, why would you change when you went to a field? What would make you sort of decide
Yeah.
on a certain coil type?
So it would depend on a couple of things. I mean, we jump back to the water. So if there's one area that I probably wouldn't use this, and that's actually physically in the water. You can use it in the water, but I wouldn't be wading out to waist deep with a coil this big because of the drag it takes through the water. So that's an example where you definitely wouldn't use the coil, and Paul's shown how its great ability on the wet and the dry sand down the beach anyway. So I'd definitely use one of the smaller coils from the Manicore if I was actually in the water.
Plus, you'd also have to
Eh,
dig a damn big hole if you found something deep, and you'd be going blah, 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 trying to dig it out the ground, like
yes, yes. Try to find some Spanish ship that wrecked on the Australian coast in the 1600s or something like that. So
700 meters down. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
yeah,
right.
but in terms of, as I said, it's still got some great separation, Trevor. So even when I'm
Mm.
in really really trashy areas, it still has that performance where it sort of covers the air and still gives enough information about that. It would only be in an area where I had the trash was just overlapping after overlapping after overlapping. And then that's where I'd probably then use probably either one of the M8 or M9 calls for
Yeah.
the Manticore. And again, the other thing about putting those smaller calls on, not that we're talking about those smaller calls, is
It's
again,
good.
slow down.
Yeah.
Slow down, especially when you're in the trashy areas. You'll be surprised just if you just slow right down that you will find targets inside highly trashed areas. So
Super good separation.
Yeah,
yes, yeah,
correct.
yeah. Yeah, but apart from that, I think one of the other important parts about the coil too is I think a lot of people think that because of the weight of the Manticore and having this big coil at the end, that it sort of almost has a bit of swing in that, but it's very, very solid. So you don't have that
That flex.
feeling where it's actually swinging backwards and forwards like a
Mm.
pendulum sort of
Mm.
thing. And again, all that's testing's been done through my lab,
Mm.
who endorsed this call as well. So if it was starting to swing just because of its weight, it wouldn't pass the mind lab test, and it'd be thrown back to
Mm.
your fine
Oh,
self
that's right. They'd
to
say
upgrade
go
it.
and
So
try revision number 3 or 4 or whatever. Yeah, that's right. Well, we've been through a few revisions, and our very first prototypes, which Guy got one of those, was like a Frankenstein 3D printed, stuck together thing, which got us going before we actually had the official plastics for it. So, super important. And I find with the bigger coil, when I use that, is to really make sure that my upper body is like helping the swing as well. The smaller coils, I'll use my arm a little bit more, but when I'm using bigger coils, I just tend to sort of twist my upper body a little bit more just to help keep that coil balanced so it's not lifting at the end because you've got such a bigger coil too. It's a little bit of lift can make a dramatic effect, and you can also get some noise changes. So,
Yeah,
um,
and I think also the actual little bit extra weight can sometimes help you in that regard as far as keeping your coil. I mean, I'm guilty of it too every day, and then you get a bit fatigued and
yeah,
you get that bit of a pendulum effect going with the swing if you're getting tired. But the extra weight of that coil sort of almost makes you detect a lot flatter if you know what I'm saying
yeah,
with the
exactly.
coil on the ground. So it might perhaps work in your favour in some instance.
So, you guys have been out already. There's some nice things on the coils behind you there. You've found some targets already, Paul. Have you had any good finds that you can let us know? We'll put some images up, and you might be able to throw a couple behind your head there as well. But
Yeah. Oh, hang on. Which way do I got to move here? Where's
yeah,
me? I found a lovely English sixpence here. I think it was George the Fourth. Is that right, Guy? I think it was.
it
Um,
certainly was.
yeah, that's right. I always get them mixed up, but that was really nice. That was the first one of the first silvers I found with that big coil, and it was actually in a hole with another little threepence too. So that was great, and also a religious. Where am I pointing? This sort of religious medallion here. I think it's got the Lord's Prayer on it. I've done a video of that. That was deep. That was probably with my pinpointer, it was nearly double the depth of that. So it would have been a good 13, 14 inches deep. So that was surprising. And we made a conscious effort to go over all old grounds that we've been over before. So whether or not we've just missed these targets, you could say that, but that one was certainly deep. And
mm,
I don't know if the other calls would have really hit on that one. So it was just a little. I could hear a really lovely high tone that was there, and it pulled me up, made me stop and go over it again,
yeah.
and it was very deep. So yeah, and just some old English pennies and a few Aussie pre-decimal coins and that sort of thing. But it's always nice finding an early silver, that's for sure. So.
And I think what you said is a good point that this larger coil opens up new ground that you've searched
For
before.
sure, yeah.
You might get this deep with every coil, but if you can go a little bit deeper, all of a sudden you've got this new layer of ground that
Yes.
you've never detected before with that machine. It can really open up new
Yes,
areas.
certainly. So me and Mickey couldn't make it tonight, by the way. So apologise for that. But we made the decision to go over all old ground with the Manticore and the Big 18 just for that same reason. And I was pulling out little threepence, tiny buttons, the separation and that sort of thing with the machine and that coil was brilliant. But whether or not we missed them the first time around, who knows? But because that happens too. But it
Mm.
certainly wasn't missing anything the second time around. So it was fantastic.
Yeah. So, Guy, also you've got a coil behind you there as well with some targets on. What about you with any significant or good finds that you found so far with the coil?
Yeah. So again, one of the things that I like to do, and as Paul's just elaborated on. So I know at least three of the parks that I did test this out on, and even some of the areas that I've been out into the bush, I've detected these for 10 to 15 years, right? So what I'm and that's why it's a really, really good test because number one, I know the depth of a lot of the coins. And the other part about it is that it also pushes the machine, right? So a lot of the targets are what we consider to be dirty targets, right? So they're not jumping out, beautiful pristine 90s. You get the odd one that'll come out on that. And I think one of the videos that I have released, shows that there was a bit of a messy. I think it was about a 67 on the Manticore, but it came out as a beautiful little 92.5 Aussie threepence it was. So it's again, it's part of what we try to do. There's no use taking these to new parks where I don't understand because unlike I suppose unlike some of the places in the bush where you have a good idea of how the depth of some of the coins and so forth. When you go, it's better to make sure to go to areas where you know what the depth is. And a lot of the places I go have been top dressed over a number of years.
Right. Yeah.
And that's why a lot of the targets are very difficult to get and test the machine. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to push the machine to
Push
to
it. Go to
and
its
it-
limits.
and I'm not the only one that's been to all these sort of parks. And as Paul said, maybe I just didn't walk that way or something like that. But still getting really, really good results with a bigger coil, especially in some of the urban areas as well. So as I said, really, really good. Still being able to actually separate in those smaller targets. So I'm pretty sure that one of those little throwages was on edge, and that's sort of added to the sort of I suppose the dirty target,
Yeah,
if
dirty
you like.
target, but shows the ability of the Manticore and the MYTHTEK, and yeah, that's really good.
Yeah. So, and again, that's the challenges, and this is, we can Paul and I can talk as quite experienced users, but also gives you confidence. So, someone who's has just got a Manticore and wants to get out there and wants a bigger coil, wants to get cover some big area and so forth, that they can have confidence that it's gonna pick up. Not only the easy to get targets, but also some of the rough ones, and it's a really, really good learning exercise to get the best out of the Manticore as well.
Yeah, very good. Well, thanks, gentlemen. That's we'll wrap up part 2 there, and we've got one more part to go with a bit more of a discussion. But some of the takeaways from this is, basically your swing technique, making sure you're nice and slow, keeping the coil really parallel to the ground. Don't go too fast. The big coils will make you slow down a little bit. And don't be afraid to use a larger coil in areas where you've been before, where you think everything's gone, because the larger coils do have deeper ability because of their natural large size and magnetic field that they're putting out. So super important that you head out to some of these areas you've been to before with the smaller coils, standard coils, or even the 15 and give it a shot. So thanks, gentlemen. Hang out with me. End of part 2. We'll see you in part 3.
Thanks, Trev. Thanks, Guy.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Part 3. We've got Paul Cointector and Guy, the Gold Rush guy, helping me chat about our new 18-inch MYTHTEK coil. Just happened to have one I prepared earlier. Look at the size of that. Doesn't even fit on the screen. Look at that.
It's massive.
Massive, it actually gets smaller back here, but it's
Yes,
pretty
that's
good
right.
here. So, but yeah, certainly it's a large coil for the Manticore detector. Release date is September 18th, 2024, which is coming up soon at the time we recorded this, but you may be watching this afterwards, which is fine. There's still plenty of tips and tricks, and we've got part 1 and part 2 that you can watch as well. And also I'll be doing a few tech tips, and we'll get Paul and Guy and some of our other ambassadors around the world to do a few tech tips for us now and then, which will help us and help you, the viewers, understand how to use these big coils and some tips from people that are using them regularly. And so thanks for joining me, gentlemen, for part 3
Thanks,
here.
Trev.
Thank you, thank you. And I just wanted to start off, we talked about, swinging the coil, why you would use a larger coil. We talked about some of your great finds that you guys have found already, which people can see on your YouTube. But one of the other things that people will be asking a lot about, which you don't have to tell in detail if you don't want, but settings. The Manticore obviously has some settings that you can adjust and play with. So just for your general aspect, or if there's some settings you can share, what settings would you use, Paul, with a large coil like this? Is there any specific things that you can describe?
Yeah, well, I was a bit boring. I just tried to keep things as simple as I could without mucking around with the machine too much. As guys said before, that machine out of the box is a pretty decent, it's a powerful unit.
Yeah.
So I've just written down a few things here. I was just in all-terrain general.
Yep.
And I just kept everything else. I didn't touch anything else. The recovery speed, I had it on about between 4 and 5.
Yes.
And the sensitivity was anywhere between, say, 25 and maybe 32. I ran it pretty hot a few times. Yeah, and it actually put up with it really easy. So that's all. There was no secret settings for myself. I just tried to keep it as simple as that. And I was popping coins and medallions, and I found a lovely couple of religious brooches, medallions, and some really good targets and finds. Just keeping things super simple. So that's all. That's all I got.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I mean, keep it simple, don't have to, go out there and overthink the situation.
No.
I mean, like you said, factory presets, the machine's already powerful. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, is there?
No, that's right. And that's what I intentionally tried to do, was just keep it simple. Like I said, someone new to detecting that wants to pick up a Manticore, they might not know all tone breaks and all different things that you can do with that machine. They might just want to turn it on, use a few settings and go. And if it was getting a bit hot or a bit noisy, I'd just back the sensitivity off, pretty much gone. And that's all I did. So, and the results, well, they pretty much speak for themselves. So,
and that's a really good point for the newbies out there that have just bought a Manticore, might be their first detector or 10th, who knows, but, learn it first in factory preset before you start mucking around with things.
Yeah, correct.
That can really confuse you if you start, like you're saying, playing with this, that, and then you're like, oh, I don't know how it is. And then it starts maybe even doing negative effect because it's too noisy or
that's right, yeah.
Not stable.
And as they go along, there's plenty of other YouTube videos out there with all different settings for the Manticore and using different coils and that sort of thing. So as they progress with that machine and they're learning it a little bit more, then perhaps they can get on there and start mucking around with it. And I suggest that you do that. But for this particular test, I just try to keep it simple.
Yep.
And smashed it.
How about you, Guy? As far as settings, you might have some special stuff that you can sprinkle over the top of the detector before you start. And
he's not going to tell you.
That's right. That's right. He's gonna mouth it and press mute and go,
yeah,
and then what was that?
Yeah.
Come on, guys, spill the beans.
Well, I can. It is called the MYTHTEK, but I'll give you one myth. And that is all these different settings that people put out and send around and saying, "Oh, you have to have this and you have to have that and you have to have that." It's not. So the only small and so what I've basically done is change the audio profile of that to suit my ears.
Right.
Apart from that, very, very similar to how Paul's got his set up. So all terrain general. You can notch the recovery speed down maybe 1 from the default, but be careful. Don't just think, oh, I've got a big coil, it goes deeper. I'll just drop that recovery speed and I'll be able to dig targets at 3 foot. It doesn't work like that because it inhibits other parts of the strengths of the of the machine. So,
Point.
as I said previously in one of the other tech talks with the MYTHTEK, is that there's so much engineering and testing goes into these standard defaults for the machine. If you and I know MyLab's just put out a few videos about it. If you go too far out from that, I'll almost guarantee you that you won't get the performance out of the machine.
Yeah.
So that's my sort of number one advice. Probably the one thing that I do is with the noise cancel. So some people just noise cancel at once. So one of the great things that the Manticore has is this rolling noise cancel, especially when you're in sort of more urban areas. Is to hold that button down to at least get a consistent number for at least 5 seconds, and that you'll find that the coil will run a lot more stable.
So what do? You
Using
hold the
that.
button instead of a press, your single press, you hold it down.
Yep. Yep.
Cool. I'm learning something too here, viewers. So, I've run the coil a bit, but these guys, I'm listening to very much so. So I'm taking some notes.
Yeah, and Trevor, another thing too, I don't know if guys seen this, but there was a couple of videos I've seen on YouTube where the recovery speed was at 1, and they did a few tests, and they had the recovery speed really, like at the lowest, and it was actually missing targets.
Right.
So they say at least run it around 3 or 4. So I was surprised that, because I know a couple of guys that run it at 1 or 2. So I don't know, are they missing targets? I'm not really sure, but
well, look,
yeah.
just remember, viewers, that everyone has a choice.
That's right.
These are just suggestions, and this is how they run them, and with some advice where you can. But you have a choice of where you run these things with sensitivity and recovery speeds and settings and things, and do what suits you out there. Make sure that you feel comfortable with the machine, and because the last thing you want is to go to an area and you're second guessing your equipment, how you're feeling, the fatigue. All of a sudden, you're starting to overthink things, and you're not concentrating on these subtle signals that'll mean a nice deep gold sovereign or target or whatever it may be, compared to, frustration. So just remember that they are suggestions out there.
Yeah. Trevor, and the other thing that, especially using the bigger coil, that I noticed helps a lot. So when you're pinpointing, don't just necessarily just do the sort of 90 degrees. So you'll probably see in my videos, a couple of them, I sort of make a circular motion, which actually around where I think the target is, to get that sort of that end point, which is a little bit different to when you're using some of the smaller coils. And then you can actually hit the pinpoint function on the Manticore.
Yeah.
And at this stage, I haven't gone through a coin. So that's the other thing that people say, oh, it's a bigger coil, how do you pinpoint, and all that kind of stuff. Well, there's a really, really good tip for people out there when you do get your MYTHTEK 18, is to not just go sort of in that sort of the perpendicular sort of that way, but actually just sort of circular around it, and that'll help you actually pinpoint it, and then just use a pinpointer on the Manticore.
And then press the pinpoint button for that central point. And do you find when you press the pinpoint button, it's centered to the coil?
Yes, most definitely. Yeah. So that's, again, this is one of the tests that I do to make sure that's how the center point or the sweet spot of the coil is actually in the center as well, because that's a critical aspect of the machine.
Yeah. Yeah, very important that that works as it should do, because we don't want people sort of trying to dig here and it's recognizing over there. So the center of that coil, when you press pinpoint after you've done whatever technique you do, and like Guy's saying, that circular motion can help. Give it a try. Press that pinpoint button and you're right on top of it.
Yeah, and there's another little technique, Trevor, too, where you can sort of get the coil. Hang on, where are we? And just roll off the target a little bit and it disappears. And as you come back on it, you pick that target up, and a lot of the times you find it's just in front of your coil.
Yes.
So just roll off your target, and when you don't hear it again, you can come back on it and it gives you, you know, and obviously you use your pinpoint also, but that's another good way that I've learned to pinpoint over the years, and don't always get it right, but it's a good little tip to try and help you recover that target a bit easier and that sort of thing. So
I
Yeah,
think
and the other one, Trev, is that sometimes you get broader or larger targets. You may have a powder flask or something like that.
yeah,
So the other part about that is to assist it, especially if it's a relatively shallow, is just because it'll be a big broad signal and it makes the pinpointing difficult, is just to lift the coil up a little bit, and
mm,
that just helps with that pinpointing as well.
that's a
But that's
really
more
good
for the
point because,
yeah,
yeah,
for the
go
broader
on.
ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying that's more for the bigger, broader
Yes.
ones that we get. So
Yeah, that's right. The bigger and broader the target, the larger the target, especially if it's closer to the coil, it'll sort of saturate it all over, and it can really give you a bit of. Sometimes with coils, you can get triple signals. When the coin's really close to the surface, it'll sort of beep under here and then here, you know, because you've actually got windings that are all through this coil from the external perimeter through to this crossover in the middle. So just backing that coil off the ground a little bit just to relocate and reset yourself. And then, you know, if you're finding it's a little bit jumpy, come from a different angle, try a bit of clear ground, reset yourself, reset your hearing, and then come back up on it again to see if you can really get it. And if in doubt, try and have a scrape, you know, dig it out. That's, you know,
that's right.
those few inches down closer will mean whether that target's going to jump out or not. So,
Yeah, and just like anything, the more you do it, the better you get at it. So, you know, after a while, you don't even really think about it. You just, you know where your plug is.
yeah.
9 times out of 10, there's your target. So you do get better at it as well. So
Yeah,
stick at it. Yeah.
pinpointing, like you said, both of you, you know, people get a little bit shied away from big coils because how am I going to pinpoint all of that? And you said the target separation's been pretty good with this coil. So trust the ability in the coil and the machine and yourself. And, you know, hopefully that'll mean that you'll get a few more targets. Is there any other setting type or anything that you'd use, you know, sand or beach? Or do you swap those settings around when you're in those locations too? And any changes there, Paul?
Yeah. Well, I had that short time on the beach with the coil, and I'm keen to get back actually because I love beach detecting.
Mm,
But I just started out in beach general, and then I found myself. I went to low conductors, and then I went to beach deep.
mm,
And they're all fairly different. So, and I sort of just try and to go from one to the other and have a little bit of a play around there on the beach for the different settings. But that's what you have to do with a machine like this.
yeah.
Use different things, trial out different things in different scenarios, and not one spot's going to be the same as the next spot. Where I detected that day, there was a massive storm, so there was
Yeah.
a big cutout in the sand, and a lot of
Right.
the targets were pretty much exposed. So
Yeah.
each different scenario is going to be, a little bit different from the next. So just play
Mm.
around with it, and that's all I can really, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, good
advise
point. Good
there.
point. How about you, Guy? Any other setting requirements that people need? You know, we do design it as a plug and play, but you know, if you were going to the beach, would you certainly look at changing those settings?
oh yeah, most definitely. I think that the beaches are quite a different beast, if you like, compared
Mm,
to when we're out in sort of the gold fields. And I think one of the other important thing is that it's also, I've used it in highly mineralized ground as well, so it still has the capability to work through that, and also to get that depth. So yeah, it's one of those things where yeah, it is horses for courses, and because of that saltwater interface, you have to use those modes. Not necessarily have to, but it's preferable to use those modes to get the best out of the manticore.
mm,
But going back to some of the the difference between a park and also out in the gold fields,
mm,
I've noticed I haven't had to change too much on the settings to
mm.
still ensure that I get that performance.
And talking about the Goldfields, Guy, with the 18-inch Knox, you actually found a nice nugget with the 18, I recall. With the
Thanks.
MYTHTEK as far as getting out on the gold fields and using this in gold mode or going for gold for this, there'll be people out there, especially in Victoria, Australia, that, may want to use this around trashy goldfield areas. Can they still expect to see the gold nuggets if they're there?
Oh, most definitely. Because yeah, I mean, I always say to people, they go, "Oh, well, you can't find gold nuggets," but half sovereigns and things like that only weigh about 4 grams. So yeah, no, you can definitely find them, and one of the interesting parts is that you still find, and Paul agree with this as well, is that you're still finding small bits of lead and small bits of this that could quite easily be gold nuggets. So
Mm.
would I recommend go gold hunting with the Manticore with an 18 inch? There's other better ways of actually finding gold
Yep.
to be honest. But yeah, I've been very, very lucky with both the CTX and the Knox finding gold nuggets in goldfields because
Mm.
there's
Well,
a
you're
there was a
using
lot
it
of
there.
running.
You've taken it there and you've
Yeah,
turned it on and you're using it there. So,
yeah. And
that's
again,
good.
it's not necessarily a specific test. I don't sit out there and, put a point 0.1 and a point 0.5 and a 1 gram and a
Mm.
2 gram and all that kind of stuff because it's not what the Manticore's set up for. So if you go over a decent piece of gold, even at depth, then you will find it.
Yeah. No, very good. And, another thing that I wanted to just touch on is, why we make different coils and different sizes for machines and why there are so many out there for different models as well. And, really for you, Paul, like why would you go and buy an 18-inch MYTHTEK? If you were using a Manticore, why would you use different coils and why would you choose an 18-inch MYTHTEK?
Yeah, sure. Well, a lot of the times, well, probably 98% of the times, me and Mick, we always tend to go out together.
Yeah.
And actually, sometimes what we'll do, we might have 50-acre uh, parcel of land, private permission that we're detecting. We'll split up and take the two ways, and I'll look for noisy ground specifically with the bigger coil.
Yeah.
Because as you know, 50 acres is a hell of
It's
a
a
lot
fair,
of.
decent swing.
Yeah, that's right. And it's fantastic for finding the noises. That's always, sometimes we're not even after a good target, we're just after the iron in the ground or just some indication that there was, previous life there, I guess,
Yeah.
and the noisy
Yeah.
ground. And Mick might break out the little 10x5 for the Equinox 800,
Mm.
or, just a smaller coil for that situation. But yeah, it's a great tool just for covering ground and
Mm.
finding noisy areas. So we do it all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Except
right.
once he went that way and I went that way, and he got 3 gold sovereigns. So
Oh, I should have gone the other way at Albuquerque, hey? I
always
should have
happens.
made that left turn. Damn
That
it.
left turn at Albuquerque.
Yeah. What about you, Guy? Like, why would you buy a different coil and especially an 18-inch MYTHTEK for your Manticore? You've just bought it, you've using the 11, what would entice you to buy a coil like this?
Yeah, well, a little bit like Paul and Mick, a lot of the areas and permissions that I go to are on large acreage, and well, I'd love to be retired. I'm not, so I only have a certain amount of time. So it's great to actually get a bigger coil, get an idea of all the area and Paul, that's one of the biggest tips, especially when you're out on some of the earlier sites. You want it to be noisy
Yeah.
because if it's not noisy, it usually means that you're just on pasture and there's nothing there. So
So noisy, you
so
mean
yeah,
lots
that
of targets? Like,
yeah. Well, the machine will become noisy. It will start grunting. It's usually because the soil's particularly been turned over. It's probably got deep decomposed iron that's rusted away over the last 150 years and all that kind of stuff. So that's
okay, yeah.
what you look for, and that's when you start slowing down. And I've been out with Paul and Mick a few times, and yeah, we just go over areas, and yeah, we've done some paddocks and not heard a thing, and then we go into other paddocks. It's just noisy as hell, and we
Mm.
just we slow down, and yeah, we usually do pretty well in those paddocks.
That's brilliant. Yeah, brilliant advice there. So one thing for us that we we exist because we can make aftermarket coils, and we know that each coil does something different on the ground. There's no way that anyone can tell me in my many years of experience, and I'm sure you gentlemen would say as well, that one coil will do everything. People have their favorites, there's no doubt about it. But each coil is putting out a different magnetic field and is looking for at a different window of target. So it's a bit like your golfer out there. They're not going to go out onto a big golf course with one club in their bag. They're going to use a different club for a specific reason, and they may not use every club in their bag each time they go out. But at some point, they'll go, "I need that."
Correct.
So by having a different coil and a different choice going over the same ground or new ground, it'll really give you the opportunity to find more targets. And ultimately, that's what you guys do it for, I'm sure. You're after that elusive gold sovereign or the rare medallion and the rare cricket buckle, or over in the UK, our friends are looking for staters and rare coins and buried treasure. We sell a lot of these through the Middle East as well, into some of those regions where there's old Persian Empire treasures and things like that. So, um, you
Oh,
know, using different coils on the same machine and on the same ground is really going to be beneficial. So, don't shy away from getting another coil out there, especially if it's a Coiltek.
correct.
So really, that's a bit of a wrap up for what we're going to talk about in this 3 episode MYTHTEK Talk, Tech Talk. So hopefully the viewers got a fair bit out of it. Paul, can you give us a bit of a rundown about what you guys do and your YouTube channel and that?
Yeah, sure. Me and Mick, well, Mick's actually a bottle collector, and he's been bottle digging for 40 plus years. And actually, they
Wow.
metal detect to find noisy grounds to give them indication where the bottles were. So
Oh,
that's how Mick sort
fantastic.
of got into metal detecting, and I'm a bit the same. When I was a young kid, Dad used to come to the gold fields, and that was back in the 70s. So that's
Yeah,
showing
wow.
my age a bit. But yeah, so I think I've been doing the coin and relic stuff series for about 10 years. And I've learned a lot over that time. And where we
Still
are in the north,
learning.
yeah, and we're in the North Victoria, so there was a lot of activity here. They were chasing the gold, so there was communities that were camping up and down the creeks and in the paddocks, and we're fairly blessed with a lot of good areas actually. So if you're nice enough to the farmer and he lets you on, it's fantastic, especially when you found a new
Mm,
paddock.
yeah.
And it's just the thrill of the chase, I suppose. I used to do a lot of fishing, but now I find myself doing a lot of dirt fishing, I
Dirt
call it. So
fishing. Yeah.
yeah, so and it does get addictive, but it's a great hobby. You can do it by yourself. You can do it with some friends.
Yeah.
You can do it at night time. You can do it. It's endless, really, and you can
Mm,
hit the beach. A lot of people, do it underwater diving, and there's a fantastic community too. So I've met
it
great
is.
friends like Guy. I never knew Guy before I detected. Met him over at Wedderburn, and just yeah, the whole community, and it's just a fantastic hobby to get into and meet good
Absolutely.
people like yourself too, Trev.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and to you. And what about some of your adventures? How can they find that, Paul?
Yeah, well, we've got a YouTube channel. It's called Cointector Australia.
Cointector Australia.
Hang on. Oh, this is all backwards.
It's back.
So,
That's all right. You can
yeah.
see how savvy we are with all this stuff,
Oh, we're
so
pretty computer. Yeah, but that's on YouTube.
Cointector.
Cointector Australia, yeah, and also on Facebook there too. There's a little page that you can go and see. We upload some photos of different finds, but it's hard to always get out every week
Yep.
because we both work full time and that sort of thing, and life gets in the way. So we really try hard to get out as much as we can, but sometimes it's just not possible. But yeah,
Yeah, some really good content. We'll put the
that's
link
it.
down in the comments below for people to hit up your YouTube video and like and subscribe to ours and his. And Guy, talk about how can people find you and a little bit about you and your detecting escapades.
Oh, yes, yes. Yeah, you can find me on the Gold Rush guys. So I do a bit of everything, a little bit like Paul's does a bit of gold as well. So yeah, I'll probably do I wouldn't say 50-50, just depends on the season. But yeah, I love getting out into the bush. So there's two things. I love getting out in the bush. That's why I love going out for gold. But especially the coin and relics, I love the Australian history of the gold fields. So yeah, you'll find me sometimes in libraries and real sort of places, places like that. Because
Doing your
it's
research.
just it's just research, 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 and
Yeah, good
yeah, it's
point.
great. Paul and I talk a lot about some of the areas up there, and share spots, and it's not only doing the research. People like Mick and Paul are just amazing people that are very, very approachable, and they seem to get a lot of really, really good permissions on big areas, and big areas that have seen um, a lot of
Activity.
Australia's early history and sort of
Mm.
up in Ned Kelly country there. So
That's brilliant. Well, that's excellent, gentlemen. We really appreciate it. Like I said, everyone will put the links to both of their YouTube channels and socials in the comments below. And make sure that you can ask them any questions. They said they'd be happy if you've got any questions around that 18-inch MYTHTEK or on any other Coiltek products or whatever they do. They'll tell you as much as they can without breaching any confidentiality. Obviously, they do their research, they get their permissions, they treat their farmers really well, and the areas that they go to, they look after to make sure that there's no issues with, dig holes. They leave it as well as they found it, if not better. So we encourage everyone to detect very well and stay healthy and safe out there. We really appreciate it. Thank you for joining me, Paul and Guy.
Thank you, Trevor.
I feel a little bit like the Brady Bunch, sort of looking, he's with him and he's with
over there,
him,
over there.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, no, really appreciate it. Thank you for taking some time this evening with me and having some great insight for all the viewers.
No, that was great. And just one other thing, I want to thank you, Trev, for giving me the opportunity to test the MYTHTEK coil. It's been fantastic, and I hope everything goes well on release date.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We really appreciate that for sure. And Guy, thank you. We'll look forward to more episodes from both of you coming out soon. In the meantime, people, you can hit us up through our socials as well, coiltek.com.au website. You can contact us direct. We're here to answer any questions. We really look forward to bringing this new MYTHTEK coil out to the market and seeing what people find with it. I'm sure there'll be some great stories coming out. Keep an eye on our socials as well for latest discoveries. We will more than likely put one of these up to win. All you need to do is submit a story with a Coiltek coil, and if it's a good story with some good photos, you might be in the running for winning one. But in the meantime, we're going to sign off. Thank you for joining us on this Tech Talk. Paul,
thank you, Guy. Thank you, Trev.
Thank you very much. Good night, good evening, good day, and have a great time.